Spiritual decline rarely starts with a sudden crash. It begins as a silent downward pull, a passive slide away from conviction toward a destructive end. Paul recognized this slide in the Hebrew Christians. They weren't just tired, they were in danger of losing their foundation entirely. To stop their descent, he wrote a specific sequence in Hebrews 10:22 through 25, designed to shock their latent memories back to life. This sequence isn't a suggestion, it's a series of maneuvers to arrest that slide by activating 3 specific internal weights: faith, hope, and love. As we walk through Paul's 3 instructions, you should record a specific response for each one. Having these marked down will help turn these ancient verses into your own immediate path forward. Halting a slide requires more than just wanting to stop. It requires a deliberate, rhythmic execution of these 3 movements. The first movement is a pivot toward the Creator. Paul commands, "Let us draw near." He is addressing the lackadaisical drift by demanding an intentional change in direction. In verse 22, he describes this approach as coming with a true heart in full assurance, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. This imagery is rooted in the requirements for Old Testament priests. Before they could enter the holy place, they had to wash away the world's dust. Paul is telling us that we cannot draw near while clinging to the attitudes that caused us to drift in the first place. To apply this, identify a specific moment today where you will stop the world's noise and intentionally pray. Note that time down now. Scheduling this moment transforms a vague desire into active faith. It is the first anchor you drop to keep from sliding further backward. Once the connection is restored, the second movement is to stand your ground. Paul tells us to hold fast the confession of our hope. This is a direct counter to the "what's the use" resignation that often follows spiritual fatigue. Verse 23 reminds us that we aren't holding on through our own strength, but because He who promised is faithful. The focus shifts from our current failures to the certainty of the resurrection. This is the mindset of a farmer. As James 5:7 explains, the farmer waits with long patience for the rains. They don't abandon the field because the sky is clear today. They hold fast because the harvest is a settled fact. To give up now is to treat the grace God has already shown you as if it were worthless. Choose one promise from Scripture that addresses your current struggle and write it beside your prayer time. This is the truth you will refuse to let go of this week. When you choose to persevere in spite of the current weather, you generate hope. You are no longer looking at the dark current around the boat, but at the shore. The final movement is to look outward. Paul uses the word consider as an emphatic command to give conscientious care to the people around you, to study their trials, their weaknesses, and their needs. This is why verses 24 and 25 insist on not giving up meeting together. We cannot consider one another if we have isolated ourselves from the community. We are meant to fire each other up. Through good examples and words of encouragement, we carry out our common responsibilities together, rather than struggling in isolation. This creates a shared defense. In a healthy community, your strength supports someone else's weakness, and their resolve helps you when your own begins to fail. Write down the name of one person you can reach out to this week. Your task is to provide them with a specific word of appreciation or encouragement. Focusing on the survival of others activates love. This is the final binding force that secures both the individual and the community against burnout. You now have 3 points of resistance: a time for faith, a promise for hope, and a person for love. These 3 virtues are not just spiritual concepts. They are the only way to reverse the slide we identified at the beginning. If the drift is left unchecked, it leads inevitably to a path of destruction and the lake of fire. These steps are the intervention. These virtues are already part of you because of God's Spirit, but the choice to use them is yours alone. Nobody can do this work for you. You must decide to stop drifting. But remember, the moment you choose to exert that effort, you aren't working in a vacuum. God is always there, ready to provide the strength to execute the plan. Take what you've written and put it into practice. The slide stops today.